Hello and welcome. My name is Sanjay Soni. Here's a microlearning readiness video. To kick off, let me welcome Bob to the studio.
Hey,
Hi,
Sanjay.
Bob.
Hey, what's going on? Gosh, what a packed agenda.
Of course.
Can we do that today?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Thank you.
Great to have you here again. So please, Bob, let's start with quick introductions again.
Sure.
What do you do at Microsoft?
Yeah, this is now almost my 26th year at Microsoft, Sanjay.
Awesome.
How crazy is that? All working in SQL Server. I'm an engineering team. I'm an architect engineering team, and spending a lot of my time lately talking about 2019. So I'm excited to be here today.
Great. So let's start with our first item. Can you please talk more about the value of SQL Server 2019?
Yeah, Sanjay, look at this thing. Does this look a little familiar to you? It looks a little bit like the SQL 17 slide we showed yesterday and about the overall value of what SQL 17 is about. But it's different, and it's a big difference. And if you look at the left-hand side here, intelligence over any data, that's a big part of what Buck and Anna are going to drill into.
I see.
Imagine a world where SQL Server now is talking to Oracle and MongoDB and Cosmos DB and Hadoop with Spark built in and HDFS. I mean, for folks that have worked with SQL for a while, that just seems like very foreign things to them, right?
Yes.
But you're going to see when Buck and Ann talk about it that it's very much part of SQL Server now. And so that's one of the biggest things we're doing in the release in SQL 19. You also looked at this slide from left to right. I mentioned yesterday our platform of choice, right? Remember we honed on the fact that SQL Server now runs on Linux and containers, but it's not just about running only in those environments. It's about a platform of choice still with Windows Server. And we're going to start mixing in more about Kubernetes today. We mentioned a little bit about that yesterday, but we're going to dive a lot more in that today.
Great.
So that's kind of the platform of choice message. The value of SQL still is about performance and security. We kept honing in on meat and potatoes yesterday and the heart of SQL Server. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the 19 capabilities specific in that area. But people need to understand that we still take pride in the fact that we're the fastest database on the planet. And we're the most secure database in the industry for the last decade. BI is still a big part of SQL Server, so Power BI Report Server is still part of what you get with SQL Server, and it's still a functional thing that works with connecting to the engine. And as I said yesterday, in-memory workloads being across public and private cloud platforms and the consistency of T-SQL, you're going to hear a lot more about that today. We're going to use the T-SQL language as that consistent surface area for you. And so when you think about SQL 19 today, we talked a little bit with Debbie yesterday. Remember that SQL Server in Azure Database and Managed Instance and SQL Server is still the same engine running across these platforms. So as you think about the value of 19, some of the things I'm going to talk about today exist in both platforms. You can just go use them either in Azure Database or in SQL 19 themselves. So it's an amazing story, and probably what I should do maybe more is focus on the core of what database is today with SQL 19.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's get started with more details.
Yeah, so before I go into performance and security and things like availability, we talked about Linux a lot yesterday. We spent, I think, an hour going through that, right? And the reason is a lot of people still don't understand exactly what we're doing with SQL and Linux. And the main message is still platform of your choice with database compatibility. But as I alluded to a little bit yesterday, there are a few features on the edge of the engine like replication, distributed transaction services, and machine learning services that we didn't do in SQL 17. You didn't get those features in SQL on Linux. And now in SQL 19, already in our preview releases, you can use that functionality. Oh, wow. So it's good. So now customers, I don't want them to feel like I cannot make a move to SQL on Linux because I have something in Windows that I don't get with Linux, right? So we're trying to make sure we did that, right? We have other things we're doing like Open LDAP support to make the Active Directory configuration experience easier. I mentioned yesterday containers. And it's really interesting, Sanjay, you're going to see containers used a lot throughout the discussions in Buck and Anna. And we have the new container registry. We have Red Hat container image for CTP 2.1 and 2.2 and 2.3 for 19. And then availability group on Kubernetes, and I'll mention a little bit about that again today. So we want to make sure you understand, if you look at this slide from yesterday, the one key piece added to this, besides our distributed platforms for Linux, is Kubernetes. Yeah. And containers and Kubernetes will be a big part of the foundation of what we're doing in 19.
Awesome. So can you please talk a little bit more about the mission critical performance, security, and...
Yeah, I have to do that every time, right, don't I? Remember, Sanjay, the message yesterday is that if we don't enhance and keep innovative the performance, security, and availability of SQL engine, we don't have a product. We build so many great things on this platform that surround the product, but we have to continue to enhance these core things, and quite frankly, our customers expect us to do it. So yeah, let's dive into a little bit. Let's talk about performance. Yesterday, I mentioned a feature called adaptive query processing, right? You remember that? That was a suite of features where we have taken the query processor itself and made sure we can adapt to any workload that you provide to us with no application changes. That was a theme we talked about a lot. We don't want you to have to make app changes, but make the QP better for the workload you're giving to us. And if you look at this chart right here, The things that are not bolded is what you got in SQL 17 for adaptive QP. We've added all these things that are in bold now. And so we've kind of rebranded this as intelligent query processing. So in 19, you get all of this functionality. Let's just pick on one, for example. Memory grant feedback we talked about yesterday. This is where you run a query in SQL Server. We detect the fact that you didn't have this proper memory grant thing. You're tired of tuning and debugging that. We recognize that, and for the next execution, we make it better. Well, we only did that for batch mode queries in SQL 17 for column store-based queries, and now we do it for any query that's based there. And there's a whole slew of other features in this family that we do now. And again, the key is just change to the next compatibility level for SQL Server 19, and you just get these features, and you don't make any app changes.
I see.
It's pretty good stuff, right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well, we want to make query performance tuning when you need to do it very easy. And in fact, we have this concept of we want you to have insights at a very detailed level anywhere, anytime you need it. So there's a new feature called lightweight query profiling. Imagine you walk into a SQL Server. It's got a query that's taking a lot of CPU utilization.
Yeah.
And you think, should I kill this thing?
Right.
But maybe it's powering my VP's report that he's at his desk running.
Yes.
But you don't know to kill it until it finishes. You're not sure, and you don't want to abort it, right? Well, one way you could actually get insights to decide that is to actually go in with this new feature and see the plan details at operator levels of what it's doing live for any executing query. You can do that today for a query that finishes in SQL, but now you can do it live.
Oh, wow. While the query is running.
While the query is running.
Awesome.
We have tools from a graphical perspective to see that, or you can use our dynamic management views to see the same thing. Now you can look and say, oh, this plan is so bad it's going to take like 3 hours to run. I'm going to kill it and go apologize to my VP that will fix the problem that caused that. So again, anytime, anywhere insights to query profiling. That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
We're a big believer in making sure that we're innovative. We stay ahead of hardware trends and technologies. There's something called persistent memory that's been out there in the industry a little bit. It's starting to become very popular. So we just took a look at that and said, hey, these persistent memory devices can give us really accelerated I/O with SQL Server. So we're taking advantage of it. We actually have new technologies we've built in SQL 19 to detect a persistent memory device and either bypass the I/O stack of the kernel to make I/O very fast, or use this concept called hybrid buffer pool, where we just directly map buffer pool pages onto one of these things.
I see.
Because there's just memory, but there's special memory that's powered in a way that they survive, like a power restart.
So how is this persistent memory different from the cache we have been all used to?
Yeah. So you normally have RAM, which is just your cache, right?
Yeah.
This is actually a device that kind of looks like cache, but it's like a drive.
Okay.
But SQL can treat it like a memory card and actually copy memory back and forth at a very accelerated rate.
Awesome.
So just an example of us staying ahead of what's going on a hardware perspective and trying to make I/O a much more performant experience for the average user.
Awesome.
So Sanjay, you've heard of TempDB.
Yes, for ages, for 15
ages.
years now.
I was in support for many years and I know it, and it's a pain point actually.
Yeah.
It's a great feature of SQL to use for many different reasons, but it can become a pain point from a troubleshooting perspective. And you have this idea called latch contention that can occur. And so we've solved that in many cases over the years by having you spread out your files across SQL Server. So we have something called TempDB. It just runs faster. That's my name that I created. And I'm going to show a demonstration at the end of what that is. So I'll kind of tease you and tell you I'm going to show you what that's all about.
Yes.
That's something that is not in the current CTPs. It's something we're working on, though, for SQL 19.
Okay.
That's a pretty cool set of performance features, in my opinion.
Great.
And it's all new to 19. And besides the TempDB one in bold there, it's all available today for you to use in our current CTP builds.
All right.
Cool.
So how about security?
We have to keep innovating on security. And we built a feature called Always Encrypted in SQL 16 and 17. And we determined by talking to people that were using this functionality, there was a few limitations for Always Encrypted that we needed to solve. Along comes this technology called secure enclaves, which can be run at a virtualization level or at a hardware chip itself. And it actually gives us a new way of doing Always Encrypted that's more performant and allows to light up things like rich computing, which are queries that are not just like seeks to exact rows. So look for that. It's already available now in CTPs, and I think it's going to actually allow people that have not been able to use Always Encrypted now to start taking a look at that technology. I was just in Europe last week, Sanjay, and GDPR is a big deal to everybody in Europe, which I get it, right? They should be.
It is.
So we have new functionality in data classification. Previous in SQL 17, our tools allowed you to classify your data from a Management Studio perspective, but it was a tool solution. Now we've built into T-SQL the ability for you to add your own classification labeling system. And here's the reason that's important, that is T-SQL. It's a surface area now for programmers to use, plus you get built-in auditing. So you can then classify your data as GDPR from a column perspective, and then you can audit who, when, and what touched that GDPR data. that's going to ease the burden for you to figure out, am I compliant with GDPR type systems? And it's still applicable to folks that are not having to adhere to GDPR.
And you can do this with the scripts instead of just the Management Studio.
Yeah, here's a cool story. So, Management Studio was a tool solution. Now classification's a T-SQL solution, and we're going to bring those worlds together. So you can either use the script version or you can use Management Studio to connect it and use this new system. The last thing is interesting, static data masking that I want to mention. That is a tool-based solution today. But there are scenarios where you want to actually scrub your data. You want to mask permanently in the database emails or PII information, things of that nature. We now have a feature called static data masking with Management Studio. It actually makes a copy of your data, and it masks data you want based on rules. And it's a pretty cool experience because the tool gives you wizards to give you suggestions on how to map email addresses and social security numbers and things of that nature. So that's static data masking. And it's a tool that works with SQL Server 19 and actually with earlier versions as well.
So you can use for all PII type of information.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, is that you want to take a copy of your database and give it to developers or your testers, but you can't let them see the actual PI data.
Awesome.
So pretty cool.
All right, how about high availability?
Of course, we got to talk about availability. And we continue down the journey of making resumable online indexing a thing. We've actually done online indexing for a while now.
Yeah, of course.
And so we're just kind of finishing out that feature suite now. So we had resumable online rebuild in SQL 17, and now you can do resumable online index creation. In addition, you can do online clustered column store index rebuild and creation. That's a big request our customers have asked for. And so that's now in SQL 19. We've also enhanced availability groups, our flagship feature for HIDR in the product, including things like allowing 5 sync replicas and a concept calling primary connection redirection, allowing you to make your apps ensure you're always connected to the primary. But one of the things I showed you yesterday was availability groups for Kubernetes. Kubernetes being a platform that provides built-in availability type constructs. And so I kind of just briefly walked through this scenario where in Kubernetes, we would automate the deployment of AGs and then use the Kubernetes infrastructure to redirect your primary app and your reporting app into this system. And so Kubernetes is an amazing platform, and you're going to see a lot more this afternoon about how we're taking advantage of Kubernetes in new and exciting ways. This is a way for us to take the core engine with availability groups and make sure that we can use the built-in capabilities of Kubernetes and then automate the deployment even of these systems with a concept called an operator. It's kind of a brave new world for folks that use SQL Server on Windows for a while, and they're like, what is this thing? And so Kubernetes is becoming a very popular platform in public and private clouds, and we're kind of making a bet that that's a great platform for us to go develop things like high availability.
I see. So now the next question is, what about the developers?
Yeah, so we have to take care of developers. You know what? Actually, Sanjay, I'm just too quick for you. Okay. I showed this availability thing, and I forgot to mention 2 important features of availability.
All right.
Yeah, I just was so excited about Kubernetes and developers. We have some time. Yeah. So this is something we just announced in CTB 2.3 for 19 at SQL Bits. It's a feature called accelerated database recovery, and it exists also in Azure. So imagine a world. Get ready for this. You go delete 1 million rows in a table in a transaction. Okay, you did it, and you haven't rolled it back yet. Okay, and you're like, uh-oh, I gotta kill this query, or I gotta roll it back, and I know the rollback takes as long or longer than that delete. Imagine a world where the rollback comes back at the snap of your fingers. Imagine a world where you have really long transactions that don't cause the log to grow, and you can truncate it. Imagine a world where even for huge, long active transactions, recovery actually comes up in a matter of minutes now. That is what this feature is. It was actually codenamed constant time recovery. And the vision for us is that your recovery now, you shouldn't worry about recovery. It's just a constant time for you. That's amazing. Wow. For people that have used SQL Server a while, they know that those kind of type pain points are very, very problematic for them. And we use a concept called persistent version store to make that happen. You're going to hear a lot more about this technology as we move on in 19. Then, another pain point for availability groups for some customers is system databases. So you have agent jobs and logins and things that are not part of your database availability group, but you want that on your secondaries. So we're working right now, it's not available yet, on including availability groups for your system databases, like master and model and so forth.
I see.
That's pretty cool.
Wow.
That's coming.
Thank you.
So this is packing this in, right? Yeah. Performance, security, availability, feature after feature. Again, this is us making sure we enhance the core of the engine of SQL Server.
I see. Thank you so much.
But you asked about developers.
Of course,
sorry.
developers.
We don't want to leave them out,
There's
right?
lots of developers in the audience, I'm
There's
sure.
some developers in the audience, right? So Graph, we talked about Graph yesterday. We continue to iterate on Graph, and you can go look in our documentation of just features we keep adding on top of that. Because again, to remind you, the concept is, don't buy a third-party product anymore that specializes in graph traversals of queries. Use SQL Server. We've extended the T-SQL language so that you can model a graph-type data model put it in relational systems, but not have to write these massive recursive TTE queries to get to the data. So that's graph, and we continue to iterate on that.
I see.
UTF-8 support has been a big request for many times. Our Unicode type data types, you can literally put in these new type supports for UTF-8 and save like 50% of the space in your database. So UTF-8 support is there, and we're continuing to iterate as we move along the CTPs on making sure that's a fully functioned feature in the product. Do you remember this diagram yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, this was the architecture of us running R and Python with SQL Server. And I know we're going to get into that. I think I saw on the agenda, we're going to get more into that with Anna later on.
Yes.
So those are great technologies, but we want to kind of round out and offer you more choices and to extend the T-SQL language, not just for machine learning. So along comes Java. So now you can do Java in SQL 19, and it uses the same architecture that I've talked about that's secure, uses resource governor, runs on the same server, runs on the same computer as SQL Server, but not in the SQL Server process space. So that's coming. That's a big deal, and I don't want to steal Anna's thunder. She's got some amazing demos to talk about that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And also you mentioned yesterday that the graph capability that you have, you only have to write a few lines of T-SQL code with extensions.
Yeah, we have these predicates called match, that are just something built into the T-SQL language. So you still keep your T-SQL skills.
Yeah.
We have T-SQL syntax for node and edge tables, so you add that to the mix. And now you can start traversing your graph with T-SQL queries just like you might with a third-party product, but you don't have to buy one.
Yeah.
You don't have to ETL your data to that product. You just use it in the SQL Server engine itself.
Oh, fantastic. All right.
And it's also on Azure, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's still a scenario where it's in both the public and private cloud offerings for SQL.
Great. So I know we talked about so far about the availability, mission critical, all the good stuff. Now, can we see a live demo?
Hey man, I got to do a demo. You're probably wondering, is Bob going to show anything here? So, so let me flip over here and show you a machine I have right here. So I have a temp database stress type scenario, and Connor Cunningham, our lead architect in SQL Server, and I were talking about a problem I had. So I'm going to kick off this workload here that I've got, temp stress. And here I'm back to perfmon, I told you, right?
Yes.
I'm monitoring perfmon, batch requests per second, and latch waits, which is this common bottleneck you see with SQL Server tempdb. Now look at this chart. The green is the batch request, that's the throughput. The red is the latch waits, that's not good. It's like 400,000 per second, I know. And processor time is low. This is a massive machine. So my workload doesn't scale very well, and the reason is this bottleneck. And I can see that with this new capability in SQL 19, where I can look into a page header. You too can be Paul Randall. Paul Randall knows about internals of pages. You can run queries now that are documented and supported. And you'll notice here that the object that belongs to these pages is something that, do you know what that is, Sanjay? Do you know what sys?
Oh, I remember those when I was a DBA before.
Okay, what is it's like a system table.
Yeah, yeah.
But no one knows what this is. We don't document even what that table is.
Right.
Now, there's no latch hint in SQL Server. So there's no way around this. And people would call support, I would say, you have just to reduce your workload of tempdb. That's your solution. You have no way around it. Because in this case, I've spread out a bunch of files in SQL Server, so I don't have GAM or SGAM or PFS allocation problems or bottlenecks or page latch waits. It's all in the system table. And in fact, if you go over here and see, it took like 48 seconds to run this. So Connor, my architect says, Bob, I have a fix for you. So I literally call this the Start SQL Connor Fix.
All right.
So I'm going to restart SQL Server with a new configuration, something we're working on, right? I'm going to run that same workload.
Yes.
And when I run this workload, what I expect to happen is I expect to see that red line like not exist. And sure enough, when I run this, look at the workload change in the graph.
Oh.
The batch requests per second are almost 2 times as fast. Processor time is up high because I'm pushing the processor harder now. I don't have the bottleneck. Look at the red line. Zip. 0.
Latches
almost no latch waits. Imagine a world in tempdb where there are no more latch waits. People are watching this live now doing cartwheels. They're like jumping up and down now. No more latch waits, and so forth. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is exciting, folks, right? Isn't it?
Yeah. So this is what we're working on. It's not available yet, but we're actually going to release this in SQL 19, and it's kind of fun stuff to talk about. And by the way, the query's already done. It was 48 seconds before, now it's 22 seconds. So
Great. Awesome.
By the way, no app changes. I just restarted SQL Server, and I'm good to go. That's a great story.
So app will directly connect to this.
Yeah, the app didn't change. I just ran the same workload and just already started SQL, and SQL did it all for you. That's the idea. That's the concept.
Awesome.
Pretty cool.
Yes, awesome. So do you want to show any more? Do you have any more demo to show us?
I didn't tell you I was going to do another one. So
yeah,
why not?
Let's do a stretch demo.
Okay, we'll just try this. Okay, so I have a database here, and I've got this new feature called Accelerated Database Recovery. So let me run this. And I'm going to run a transaction, and I'm going to delete a bunch of rows in this table. Now, here I go off and delete a bunch of rows, and it's going to take about 30 seconds to do this. What's happening? I'm logging all these deletes in SQL Server. It's in an active transaction, correct? And so this is normal. You delete a bunch of rows and we go to log us. What if you tried to kill this right now, Sanjay? What do you think would happen? You try to kill this active running query. What do we have to do to this query? You didn't know I was going to test you.
Well, it's okay. So I remember the kill command. It just takes
you can kill it. We have to roll it back.
Yes.
To be consistent,
yes,
right?
Yes, yes.
Well, as it turns out, in the current logging scenario, without accelerated database recovery, we have to go log something called a compensation record. We got to go log the undo of all of this.
Of course.
So there's a bunch of logging in there.
Yes.
And it's active. So a couple of problems. One, it finished, right? But it's active. I can't truncate the log at this point because it's active, even if I checkpoint the database. And if I try to roll it back here, which I will, it's going to take another 30 seconds. So at this point, 40% of my log is used. I can't truncate it. I've got this active transaction. Now, when I'm rolling back, I can then truncate the log, right? But this is a pain. I mean, look at all the time I'm spending in this scenario. And maybe it was just a mistake in an app that I had to do. It was a problem, right? So when this is done after 30 seconds, I'm going to turn on accelerated database recovery. The delete is going to take the same time because you still have to delete a bunch of rows. But the difference is I'm going to use versioning in SQL Server. We have a new thing called versioning, not in TempDB, but in the database, to actually go back and to record the deletes. And so this finished, okay? And then I'm just going to go and show you the fact that the log can get truncated. I'll do that. Because again, this is the normal scenario with SQL Server. Let's go turn on this new feature with alter database. I'll do that. And I'm going to run the same delete. And again, so here's the difference now. I'm still having to log the deletes. It's no different. The difference is in the SQL Server itself, I'm recording versions of the deletes. So if anybody's trying to read this data, they can see the version, that's the old version before I did the delete, or depending on your isolation level, they actually see the actual deletes themselves, right? So isolation level semantics are the same. They don't change. The difference is in how we do recovery and undo. So the cool thing here, using this feature, is I can truncate the log anytime I want right now. The log will not just grow out of control because of an old active transaction. Your log truncation is based on the oldest one you have. If somebody just goes and gets a cup of coffee with an app that's bad, that's why you get these log growth problems. So in fact, you can see here in this query that the log is only 7%, where it was 42% before. So here's the kicker. You ready for this one? Here's the rollback. It took 30 seconds. It's done.
Instant.
And it's still consistent. I have the same scenario when you look at our workshops here, where if I killed SQL Server in the middle of this and I ran recovery, it would normally take about a minute to undo everything. Now it just happens. You don't even know it happened. So
fantastic.
It's both in Azure Database and public preview, and now available in SQL Server. So that's the kind of innovation we continue to make on the core engine of SQL Server. And again, we're building a modern data platform. I threw out terms to you earlier like Spark and Hadoop, and you're going to hear Buck and Anna go nuts and talk to you all about that because they're the experts on that.
Yes.
But the core engine is still the heart of what we have to do, and it powers that platform. And so you see some great examples of how we just keep innovating on that, both yesterday for SQL 17 and now for SQL 19 today.
Fantastic.
Great stuff, right?
Yes, thank you.
Pretty exciting.
Great. So now, can you please share some of the resources that you have for folks to
I want everybody to have access. Every time I speak, I want everybody to have access to everything we have. Yes. Look at this new website, AKMS SQL Workshops.
Okay.
You're going to love this site. We were modifying this yesterday. All of our demos, all of the workshops we have, all of the presentations I've done across the last decade, they're all out there for you. So you go to this one site, it's a one-stop shop. We're going to continue to innovate on that. Everything I showed you today is available there, except for the TempDB one. We're not ready to release that one yet, right? If you want to evaluate SQL 19, here's a site for you. And then we have a YouTube channel, actually, where we show things on SQL Server, and you can see it there. And then, if you want to sign up for the early adopter program, if you're thinking about maybe even running SQL 19 in production, that may be possible for you soon. And so if you want to sign up for the early adopter program, we'll talk to you. And when you hear about big data clusters today, that's another way for you to get access and use that technology. So Sanjay, we're continuing to, besides these videos you're going to get to see at some point, we're continuing to build and iterate on the content for you. And this is all free because we want everybody that's using SQL to have access to this and learn more about the technology.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to talk to you today.
I enjoyed it, Sanjay. Great. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching this video. Learn more about this and other topics at azure.com/SQLDW.